Captain Sarah stared at the holographic display floating above her command chair, watching the impossible unfold before her eyes. The alien fleet that had been pursuing her ship for 3 weeks across 7 star systems wasn't just any ordinary hunting party. According to the intelligence reports scrolling past her vision, these were the Void Hunters, the most feared predators in known space. The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 months ago, humanity had been nothing more than a curious footnote in the galactic community's databases. A young species that had barely managed to stumble beyond their own solar system, fumbling around with primitive fusion drives and basic energy shields. The other races had watched with the same detached interest they might show a child playing with building blocks. Now those same races were fleeing in terror from human space. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. His voice carried the exhaustion that had settled over the entire crew. 3 weeks of running would do that to anyone. "Put it through," Sarah ordered, though she already knew what she would hear. The main screen shimmered and resolved into the image of something that easy description. The Void Hunter's face was a nightmare of chitinous plates and glowing sensory organs, arranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled to convert its clicking, hissing language into something resembling human speech. "Human vessel," the creature said, its words dripping with what the translator interpreted as anticipation. "You continue to run. This pleases us. The hunt grows more interesting with each passing cycle." Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her hands gripped the armrests of her chair tightly enough to leave marks. "What do you want?" The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Want? We want what we have always wanted, the greatest hunt in the universe. And you, little human, you have given us exactly that." "I don't understand." "Of course you don't. How could you? Your species is so young, so naive. You started a war without even realizing it. You changed the balance of power across 17 sectors without understanding what you were doing. And now," the creature leaned closer to its camera, its compound eyes reflecting an alien hunger, "now you have attracted our attention." The transmission cut off, leaving Sarah staring at empty space. Around her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence, monitoring sensors and running diagnostics on systems that had been pushed far beyond their intended limits. Sarah's mind raced back to the beginning, trying to understand how humanity had gone from galactic obscurity to being hunted by the most dangerous predators in known space. It had started so innocently, with what the politicians had called a minor border dispute. The collective had been expanding their territory, setting up mining operations on asteroids that technically fell within the boundaries of human space. Not that humanity had been using those asteroids for anything important. They were just rocks floating in the void, too far from Earth to be economically viable for human operations. The diplomatic solution should have been simple. Humanity was weak, though we're strong. Any reasonable species would have negotiated some kind of arrangement, maybe a mining rights agreement in exchange for technology or protection. But humans, Sarah reflected bitterly, had never been particularly reasonable. Instead of backing down, the Earth Defense Force had sent a single destroyer to patrol the disputed region. The UES Defiance, under the command of Captain, had been ordered to maintain a presence and discourage unauthorized mining operations. What happened next had become the stuff of legend across the galaxy, though the full truth was still classified at the highest levels of human government. The mining fleet had ignored the human destroyer, treating it as nothing more than an annoying insect buzzing around their operations. Their ships were larger, more advanced, and backed by the full might of a spacefaring civilization that had conquered dozens of worlds. Captain had tried diplomacy first, broadcasting warnings and demanding that they cease their operations. When that failed, he had resorted to more direct methods. A few warning shots across the bow of the lead mining vessel, carefully aimed to avoid causing any real damage. They had responded by opening fire with everything they had. What the aliens didn't know, what no one in the galaxy knew, was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. The seemingly primitive human destroyer was equipped with experimental technology that Earth scientists had been developing in secret. Technology based on principles that no other species had even considered. The Defiance hadn't just survived the attack. It had systematically dismantled the entire mining fleet in less than 10 minutes. 17 state-of-the-art vessels, each one capable of reducing a planet's surface to molten slag, had been reduced to drifting debris by a single human ship that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts and good intentions. The had immediately escalated, sending their third fleet to deal with what they assumed was some kind of experimental human superweapon. Surely no species could have developed such devastating firepower without the rest of the galaxy noticing. The third fleet had met the same fate as the mining vessels. Word spread quickly through the galactic community. Humanity, the species that most civilizations had barely considered worthy of notice, had somehow developed military technology that could challenge the established powers. Emergency sessions were called. Alliances were formed and broken in the space of hours. Trade routes were abandoned as entire sectors went into lockdown. And then the real surprise had come. The technology that had destroyed the fleets wasn't some revolutionary new weapon system. It wasn't exotic matter manipulation or reality-bending physics. It was something much simpler and infinitely more terrifying. It was human creativity applied to the art of war. Every other species in the galaxy had approached military technology the same way they approached everything else, methodically, logically, following established principles and proven techniques. They built bigger guns, stronger shields, faster engines. They refined existing concepts and gradually improved their capabilities over thousands of years. Humans had taken one look at the conventional approach to space warfare and decided to ignore it completely. While other species focused on building heavily armored dreadnoughts that could slug it out in traditional fleet engagements, humans had developed swarm tactics using thousands of tiny, expendable drones. While aliens relied on energy weapons that followed predictable physics, humans had weaponized everything from modified mining charges to kinetic penetrators that could punch through any known shielding. The Defiance hadn't won through superior firepower. It had won through superior thinking. Captain had analyzed the fleet's formation, identified their tactical assumptions, and then done something completely unexpected. He had used his ship's mining laser array, intended for asteroid processing, to create a debris field that disrupted the aliens' sensor networks, then launched a coordinated attack using retrofitted cargo containers filled with modified industrial explosives. It was insane. It violated every principle of civilized warfare. It was also devastatingly effective. The news had spread like wildfire through the galactic intelligence networks. Humanity wasn't just another minor species stumbling around in the dark. They were something entirely new and unpredictable. A species that didn't follow the rules because they had never bothered to learn what the rules were supposed to be. Within weeks, every major power in the galaxy was trying to figure out how to deal with this new threat. Some attempted diplomacy, offering trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Others tried intimidation, sending battle fleets to human space to demonstrate their superior numbers and technology. All of them failed to understand what they were really dealing with. Humans didn't just fight differently. They thought differently. They saw possibilities that other species couldn't even imagine, found solutions that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Every encounter with human forces resulted in new tactical innovations that the galaxy's military analysts struggled to comprehend. A battle group had been defeated by human fighters that used gravity wells as slingshots, accelerating to impossible speeds before delivering payloads that turned the aliens' own momentum against them. A consortium fleet had been neutralized by human ships that had literally thrown asteroids at them, using jury-rigged mass drivers to turn space debris into planet-killing projectiles. The more the galaxy's military forces tried to adapt to human tactics, the more creative humans became in response. It was like trying to fight an opponent who kept changing the rules of the game in the middle of the match. And then the Void Hunters had taken notice. Sarah closed her eyes and rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. The Void Hunters were unlike any other species in the galaxy. They weren't driven by politics or economics or territorial expansion. They existed for one purpose only: the hunt. For they had roamed the galaxy in search of worthy prey. They had hunted the crystalline shapers to extinction, tracked down the last of the energy beings that had once ruled the galactic core, eliminated species that had mastered technologies beyond the understanding of most civilizations. They were the apex predators of known space, and they had never been defeated. Until now, they had shown no interest in humanity. Humans were too young, too primitive, too easy to catch. There was no honor in hunting prey that couldn't put up a real fight. But the war had changed everything. Humanity's unpredictable tactics and impossible victories had caught the attention of beings who lived for the challenge of the ultimate hunt. For the first time in centuries, the Void Hunters had found prey that might actually be worth their time. "Captain," Torres called out, his voice tight with worry. "Long-range sensors are picking up something, multiple contacts approaching fast." Sarah opened her eyes and studied the tactical display. The new contacts were moving in formation, but not like any military formation she had ever seen. They were spread out in a complex three-dimensional pattern that seemed to shift and flow like a living thing. "How many?" she asked. "At least 30 ships, ma'am, possibly more. Their energy signatures are strange. I've never seen anything like them." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice water. 30 Void Hunter vessels was more than had been gathered in one place for over a century. The last time they had assembled in such numbers, an entire star system had been sterilized. "Time to intercept." 6 hours, assuming they maintain current velocity. "But Captain," Torres hesitated, then continued, "they're not maintaining current velocity, they're accelerating." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Void Hunters weren't just pursuing them anymore. They were moving in for the kill, bringing enough firepower to reduce Sarah's ship to its component atoms in seconds. "Options?" Sarah asked her tactical officer. Commander studied his displays for a moment before shaking his head. "With respect, Captain, we don't have any. Our engines are running at maximum efficiency, but we can't outrun them forever. Our weapons are insufficient for ship-to-ship combat against even a single Void Hunter vessel, let alone 30, and there's nowhere to hide in this system." Sarah nodded grimly. She had known this moment would come eventually. The Void Hunters had been playing with them, allowing them to run just far enough to make the chase interesting. But every hunt had to come to an end, and this one was reaching its conclusion. "Send a message to Earth," she ordered. "Full tactical report on Void Hunter capabilities, along with everything we've learned about their hunting patterns. Mark it Priority Alpha and use the emergency quantum channels." "Yes, ma'am. Should I include a personal message?" Sarah considered the question. What did you say to an entire species when you were about to become the galaxy's most wanted fugitive? How did you explain that humanity's greatest military victory had also painted a target on their backs that could never be erased? "Tell them," she said finally, "that we're sorry we started this war, but also tell them that if they want to finish it, they're going to need to learn how to hunt." The message burst away through quantum space, carrying Sarah's words toward Earth at faster-than-light speeds. By the time it arrived, she would be either dead or captured, her ship nothing more than a footnote in the Void Hunter's long history of successful hunts. But as Sarah watched the alien fleet closing in on her position, she found herself smiling grimly. The Void Hunters had made one crucial mistake in their calculations. They assumed that humans were just another species to be hunted and eliminated. They had never considered the possibility that humans might hunt back. The war that had started with a simple border dispute was about to enter its next phase. And for the first time in galactic history, the Void Hunters were going to discover what it felt like to be prey. Admiral David Harrison stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching the holographic display that showed the deployment of Earth's entire military fleet across 17 different star systems. Each blue dot represented a human vessel, each red one an enemy contact. The ratio was not encouraging. 3 months had passed since Captain's final transmission had reached Earth. 3 months since humanity had learned that their greatest military triumph had also been their death sentence. The Void Hunters weren't just pursuing a single human ship anymore. They had declared an open hunting season on the entire species. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from the station," announced Colonel Martinez, his face grim as he read from his tablet. "The Void Hunter pack that hit the outer colonies has moved on to the system. Estimated arrival time at is 18 hours. Harrison nodded, his weathered face showing none of the fear that gnawed at his gut. Was home to nearly 500,000 human colonists. If the Void Hunters reached the planet with the same hunting pack that had decimated the colonies, those people would be dead within hours." "What about the Fifth Fleet?" he asked. "Admiral's ships are still 2 days out. Even if they push their engines beyond safe limits, they won't reach in time. Harrison closed his eyes and ran the numbers in his head. It was the same calculation he had been making for weeks, and the answer never changed. Humanity simply didn't have enough ships to protect all of their scattered colonies. Every time they concentrated their forces to defend one system, the Void Hunters would strike somewhere else. It was a masterfully executed campaign, Harrison had to admit. The aliens had studied human military doctrine and found its greatest weakness. Humans were protectors by nature. They couldn't abandon their colonies to save their fleet, and they couldn't protect their colonies without scattering their fleet. It was a perfect tactical trap. Sir, Colonel Martinez was waiting for orders, his hand hovering over the communications console. "Send the evacuation order too," Harrison said quietly. "All civilian transports are to begin immediate departure for the inner systems. Military assets are to provide escort and rearguard action." "Yes, sir." Martinez began typing rapidly, but Harrison could see the defeat in the man's shoulders. Everyone in the command center knew what an evacuation order really meant. They were abandoning another colony, leaving behind everything that generations of humans had built among the stars. The worst part was that running away wouldn't save them. The Void Hunters had made it clear that this wasn't a territorial dispute or a war of conquest. It was extermination. They would hunt humanity across the galaxy until every last human was dead, and they would take their time doing it. Harrison walked over to the quantum communications array, where Doctor was hunched over a console covered in incomprehensible equations. The physicist had been working around the clock for weeks, trying to understand the technology that the Void Hunters used to track human vessels across impossible distances. "Any progress, Doctor?" he asked. Looked up with bloodshot eyes and shook her head. "The quantum signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Their ships seem to phase in and out of normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to track or target. Our conventional sensors can barely detect them until they're practically on top of us." "What about the experimental detection grid?" "We've got partial coverage in the Sol system and maybe 3 other locations. It's better than nothing, but it's not enough to give us any real tactical advantage." Rubbed her temples and sighed. "Admiral, I need to ask you something. The research I've been doing, I found some disturbing patterns in the Void Hunter attack vectors." "What kind of patterns?" "They're not just hunting us randomly. There's a method to their movements, a specific strategy. They're systematically eliminating our most innovative military commanders first." Harrison frowned. "Explain." "Captain, Admiral, Colonel, Commander Williams, all of them were targeted specifically. The Void Hunters went out of their way to engage ships under their command, even when easier targets were available." Pulled up a star chart covered in red lines showing Void Hunter movements. "Look at this pattern. They could have wiped out the Titan station with minimal effort, but instead they pursued Captain's destroyer across 7 systems. Why would they do that unless they specifically wanted her?" The implications hit Harrison like a physical blow. "They're studying us." "Exactly. They're not just hunting humans for sport. They're learning how we fight, how we think, how we innovate. Every engagement teaches them more about human tactics and strategy, and once they understand us completely, they'll know exactly how to eliminate us permanently." Harrison stared at the star chart with new understanding. The Void Hunters weren't just predators. They were researchers, conducting the most lethal scientific experiment in galactic history. A soft chime from the communications console interrupted his thoughts. Colonel Martinez looked up from his station with surprise. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from outside the system. It's from Captain." The command center fell silent. Everyone turned to stare at Martinez, who was frantically checking his equipment to make sure he hadn't made some kind of mistake. "That's impossible," Harrison said. "Captain's ship was destroyed weeks ago." "Sir, I'm reading the quantum signature correctly. It's definitely the UES Meridian, and Captain's personal authentication codes are valid." Harrison felt his heart rate spike. "Put it through maximum security protocols." The main screen flickered and resolved into an image that made everyone in the command center gasp. Captain Sarah was alive, but she looked like she had been through hell. Her uniform was torn and stained, her face was marked with exhaustion and what looked like recent injuries, and her eyes held a wild intensity that hadn't been there before. "Admiral Harrison," she said, her voice hoarse but steady, "this is Captain reporting from, well, I'm not exactly sure where I am anymore." "Sarah, we thought you were dead. Your ship disappeared from our sensors weeks ago. Smiled grimly. My ship is gone, sir. The Void Hunters took it apart piece by piece, studying every system, every weapon, every piece of human technology they could find. But they made one mistake. What mistake? They kept me alive to interrogate. They wanted to understand how humans think, how we approach problems differently from other species. So they gave me access to their databases while they poked around inside my head. Eyes glittered with something that might have been madness or genius. Admiral, I've seen there. I've studied their technology, and I know how to kill them. Harrison exchanged glances with Doctor, who was staring at the screen with fascination and horror. Captain, where are you transmitting from? A Void Hunter ship that I acquired during my escape. The details aren't important right now. What matters is that I've learned something that changes everything about this war. We're listening. Leaned forward, her expression intense. The Void Hunters aren't unbeatable, Admiral. They're just very, very good at what they do. But they have weaknesses, and I know how to exploit them. The problem is I can't do it alone. What do you need? I need you to do something that goes against every military instinct you have. I need you to stop defending our colonies and start hunting. Harrison felt his blood turn cold. Sarah, we can't abandon civilians to pursue some kind of revenge mission. This isn't about revenge, sir. This is about survival. The Void Hunters are studying us, learning from every defensive action we take. As long as we keep fighting the way they expect us to fight, they'll stay ahead of us. But if we change the rules of engagement completely. You want us to become the predators. I want us to become something they've never encountered before. The Void Hunters have been the apex predators of this galaxy they've never had to deal with prey that fights back intelligently. They've never faced an enemy that learns faster than they do. Doctor stepped forward. Captain, the technology gap between us and them is enormous. How can we possibly match their capabilities? Smile became predatory. We don't match their capabilities, Doctor. We make them irrelevant. The Void Hunters rely on superior technology and overwhelming force to dominate their prey. But humans have something they don't, the ability to think outside the box. Harrison was beginning to understand. You want to use our unpredictability as a weapon. I want to use everything as a weapon. Our creativity, our adaptability, our refusal to give up even when the situation seems hopeless. The Void Hunters expect us to run and hide like every other species they've hunted. Instead, we're going to do something they never saw coming. Which is, we're going to hunt them back, and we're going to use their own technology to do it. The transmission flickered as adjusted something off-screen. When the image stabilized, she was holding a device that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts and alien circuitry. This is a Void Hunter navigation system, modified with human engineering principles. It will let our ships track their vessels through phase space, following them back to their staging areas and supply bases. For the first time in this war, we'll know where they are before they know where we are. Harrison stared at the device with growing excitement. How many of those can you build? That's the beauty of human engineering, Admiral. We don't need to build them. We just need to steal them. The Void Hunters have been so confident in their technological superiority that they've never bothered to develop security protocols against theft. Their ships are treasure troves of advanced technology, just waiting for someone clever enough to take it. You want us to raid their ships? I want us to capture their ships, strip them down, study their technology, and turn it against them. The Void Hunters have been treating this like a traditional hunt, but we're going to make it into something they've never experienced before. A war of innovation. Harrison felt a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth for the first time in weeks. What's your operational plan? Phase 1 is all ready. I've been using this stolen ship to track Void Hunter movements across 7 sectors. They have a pattern, a preferred hunting route that takes them through specific systems in a predictable sequence. If we position our forces correctly, we can ambush them at the next waypoint. That sounds incredibly dangerous. Sir, with respect, everything we do from now on is going to be incredibly dangerous. The difference is that this time, we'll be the ones choosing when and where the fight happens. Doctor was studying the tactical implications with obvious excitement. Captain, if we can capture just one intact Void Hunter vessel, the technological advances alone would revolutionize our entire fleet. That's the idea, Doctor, but we need to move fast. The Void Hunters are already adapting to our defensive strategies. If we don't change tactics soon, they'll finish their research and move to the final extermination phase. Harrison felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. The decision he made in the next few minutes would determine the fate of the entire human species. He could continue with the defensive strategy that had kept them alive so far, or he could commit everything to this insane plan to turn humanity into galactic predators. "Colonel Martinez," he said finally, "send a priority message to all fleet commanders. We're implementing a new tactical doctrine effective immediately." "Yes, sir. What are the new orders?" Harrison looked at its image on the screen, seeing the fierce determination in her eyes. "Tell them that the human race is done running. From now on, we hunt." The command center erupted in activity as officers rushed to implement the new orders. Ships that had been scattered across the galaxy, defending helpless colonies, were recalled and reorganized into strike forces. Defensive installations were abandoned in favor of mobile hunter-killer groups. Within hours, the entire structure of humanity's military strategy had been turned upside down. But Harrison knew that tactics alone wouldn't be enough. The Void Hunters had been perfecting their hunting techniques for thousands of years. If humanity was going to survive this war, they would need to become something unprecedented in galactic history. They would need to become predators that their prey couldn't understand, couldn't predict, and couldn't escape. The real war was just beginning. 6 months later, the hunting ground that had once been the nebula was silent, except for the soft hum of recycling systems aboard the human vessel UES Retribution. Captain Sarah stood in the ship's modified command center, watching her crew work with the quiet efficiency that came from months of successful raids against the galaxy's most dangerous predators. The Retribution barely resembled the destroyer that had once fled desperately through 7 star systems. Its hull was a patchwork of human engineering and stolen Void Hunter technology, creating something that shouldn't have been able to function, but somehow outperformed anything in either species' fleet. Void Hunter phase shift generators allowed it to slip through normal spacetime like a ghost. Human tactical computers processed targeting data faster than anything the aliens had ever encountered. And at the heart of it all, a crew of humans who had learned to think like predators. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Torres from his sensor station. "Single Void Hunter vessel moving through the asteroid field at standard patrol velocity." Nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Classification: Hunter-killer class, probably conducting reconnaissance for a larger pack. No escort vessels detected." "Perfect," turned to her tactical officer. "Commander, are we ready?" Grinned, his face reflecting the same predatory satisfaction that had become common among human crews. "All systems green, Captain. The new modifications to the phase shift drive are stable, and our hunter-killer drones are loaded with the latest Void Hunter disruptor technology." "Excellent. Initiate Phase 1. What followed was a carefully choreographed dance that the Retribution's crew had performed dozens of times over the past months. The human ship slipped into phase space, becoming invisible to conventional sensors while maintaining perfect tracking on their target. The Void Hunter vessel continued its patrol, unaware that death was stalking it through dimensions it couldn't perceive. Phase 2 ordered quietly. The Retribution's modified torpedo tubes opened silently, releasing a swarm of devices that looked like mechanical spiders. These hunter-killer drones had been designed using principles stolen from a dozen different Void Hunter ships, then improved with human engineering techniques that pushed the technology far beyond its original specifications. The drones scattered through normal space, each one following a different flight path toward the enemy vessel. To the Void Hunter's sensors, they would appear to be nothing more than debris from the asteroid field, right up until the moment they activated their payload systems. "Target is beginning evasive maneuvers," Torres reported. "They've detected something, but they don't know what." Smiled, the Void Hunters had evolved to hunt prey that ran in straight lines or hid in predictable locations. They had never developed defensive protocols against enemies that attacked from multiple dimensions simultaneously while using the Hunter's own technology against them. Phase 3, all drones execute. The Hunter-killer drones activated in perfect synchronization, each one targeting a different system on the Void Hunter vessel. Their payloads weren't conventional explosives. Those would have been useless against alien shielding. Instead, they carried modified versions of the aliens' own disruptor technology, designed to turn the ship's defensive systems against itself. The effect was devastating. The Void Hunter vessel's shields collapsed in seconds as its own generators overloaded. Its weapon systems seized up as targeting computers received contradictory data, and its engines shut down automatically when safety protocols detected what appeared to be massive system failures throughout the ship. "Target is dead in space," reported with satisfaction. "All primary systems offline, minimal life support only." "Boarding teams, prepare for insertion," ordered. "Remember, we want prisoners this time. Intelligence reports indicate that this ship may have information about the location of their primary staging area." The boarding operation went smoothly. After months of practice, teams had learned exactly how to neutralize Void Hunter crew members without killing them. The aliens were dangerous, but they weren't prepared for humans who fought with their own weapons and understood their weaknesses. Within an hour, the enemy vessel was secured, and its surviving crew members were in custody. Walked through the ship's corridors, examining the alien technology with the eye of someone who had learned to see possibilities where others saw only impossibilities. "Captain," called chief engineer from the ship's computer core. "You need to see this." Made her way to the core chamber, where was standing in front of a holographic display showing star charts that covered half the galaxy. Red dots marked locations throughout known space, connected by lines that formed complex patterns. "What am I looking at, Chief?" "Void Hunter strategic planning data, ma'am. Complete operational overview for their campaign against humanity." Highlighted different sections of the display as he spoke. "This confirms what we suspected. They're not just hunting us randomly. This is a systematic extermination plan designed to eliminate human military capabilities while studying our technological innovations." Studied the patterns with growing alarm. "How long do we have?" "According to this data, they're planning to begin the final phase in 6 weeks. Complete sterilization of all human-occupied systems, starting with Earth." 6 weeks. Felt a chill run down her spine. Even with all of their recent successes against individual Void Hunter ships, humanity was nowhere near ready to face the kind of force that could sterilize an entire star system. "There's more, Captain," highlighted a cluster of red dots near the galactic rim. "This appears to be their primary staging area. Every major Void Hunter fleet operates out of this region." Stared at the location, her mind racing through tactical possibilities. How many ships? Intelligence estimates suggest at least 300 vessels, including their command ships and support fleet. It's the largest concentration of Void Hunter forces ever assembled. 300 ships. Did the math quickly in her head. Even if humanity gathered every vessel they had captured or built over the past months, they could field maybe 50 ships that were capable of fighting Void Hunters on equal terms. The odds were impossible. But then again, humans had been beating impossible odds since this war began. "Chief, how much of their technology can we copy and mass-produce?" Considered the question. "With the manufacturing facilities on Luna and the captured Void Hunter shipyard we secured last month, maybe a third of their capabilities. We can't replicate their most advanced systems, but we could build versions." "What about their strategic weaknesses? Have we learned anything new about how they coordinate their fleets?" "Actually, yes." Pulled up a new display showing communication patterns between Void Hunter ships. "They use a centralized command structure with very little tactical independence at the individual ship level. Take out their command vessel, and the rest of the fleet becomes significantly less effective." Felt a plan beginning to form in her mind. It was insane, suicidal, and completely impossible, which meant it was exactly the kind of strategy that might actually work against enemies who thought they had figured out how humans operated. "Chief, I want you to begin immediate preparations for a new type of mission. We're going to need every piece of Void Hunter technology we've captured, plus some innovations that they've never seen before." "What kind of mission, Captain?" "We're going to attack their staging area." Stared at her in shock. "Ma'am, with respect, that would be suicide. Even if we could somehow get past their defenses, we don't have nearly enough firepower to damage a facility that size." "We're not going to destroy it, Chief. We're going to capture it." The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of desperate preparation. Every human ship that could be spared was recalled from defensive duties, and retrofitted with captured Void Hunter technology. Manufacturing facilities across human space worked around the clock to produce weapons and systems that combined the best of both species' engineering principles. But the real innovation wasn't technological, it was tactical. Had studied every piece of intelligence they had gathered about Void Hunter operational procedures, looking for patterns and weaknesses that could be exploited. What she had found was something that no other species in galactic history had ever discovered. The Void Hunters' greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. Their perfect coordination and centralized command structure made them incredibly effective against conventional enemies. But it also meant that they had never learned to adapt quickly to unexpected situations. They were like a perfectly tuned machine that could accomplish amazing things, as long as nothing disrupted their programmed responses. Humans, on the other hand, thrived on chaos and improvisation. The attack began without warning on a Tuesday morning, ship time. A fleet of 50 modified vessels emerged from phase space directly inside the Void Hunter staging area, appearing simultaneously in dozens of locations that should have been impossible to reach undetected. The aliens' response was immediate and devastating. Hundreds of weapon systems came online within seconds, filling space with energy beams that could vaporize planets. The Void Hunter command ship began broadcasting tactical coordination data to its entire fleet, organizing a response that should have eliminated the human attackers in minutes. But it anticipated this reaction. As the alien weapons opened fire, her ships scattered in all directions, using their modified phase shift capabilities to jump in and out of normal spacetime in patterns that made them nearly impossible to target. Some vessels appeared to be destroyed, only to reappear moments later attacking from completely different angles. The Void Hunters had never faced enemies that could be in multiple places at once. All units execute Phase 2, broadcast on the encrypted human communication channels. What happened next was something that no military analyst in galactic history had ever conceived of. Instead of trying to destroy the Void Hunter fleet, the human ships began working together to create what could only be described as a three-dimensional maze through space-time itself. Using their captured phase shift technology, they opened portals and dimensional rifts that connected distant parts of the battlefield in impossible ways. A Void Hunter ship that tried to pursue one human vessel would suddenly find itself face-to-face, with three others attacking from directions that shouldn't exist. Weapons fire that missed its intended target would sometimes emerge from dimensional portals to strike the ships that had fired them. The aliens' perfect coordination became a liability as their own tactical data began feeding them information that made no sense. Ships reported being attacked by enemies that their sensors showed were on the other side of the battlefield. Weapons systems targeted vessels that appeared to be in multiple locations simultaneously. Within an hour, the most feared predators in galactic history were completely confused and demoralized, fighting an enemy that refused to behave according to any known laws of physics or tactical doctrine. "Target the command ship," ordered. "All units converge on my position." The final assault was a masterpiece of coordinated chaos. 50 human ships attacked the Void Hunter command vessel from every possible angle and several impossible ones, using weapons and tactics that the aliens had never encountered because they violated basic assumptions about how space combat was supposed to work. When the smoke cleared, the massive alien vessel was drifting helplessly in space, its crew unconscious from the neural disruptors that had been fired directly through dimensional portals into their command center. "Mission accomplished," announced to her fleet. "We now have access to the complete Void Hunter strategic database, their most advanced technology, and their primary command vessel." But more importantly, they had proved something that would change the course of galactic history forever. The universe's most dangerous predators weren't unbeatable. They were just very good at hunting prey that played by the rules. And humans, as the galaxy was beginning to learn, had never been particularly good at following rules. The war that had started with a minor border dispute was over. Humanity had won not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the simple application of human creativity to the art of warfare. The Void Hunters, for the first time in their species' history, had become the prey, and they had learned a lesson that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. When humans declare war, they don't just fight to win. They fight to redefine what winning means.